Hey fam, welcome to Life More Abundantly, the podcast where we talk Black health like we talk everything else, real, out loud, and with love. I'm Dr. Eboni Haynes.
And I'm Dr. Tynisha Drennon. We've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get into today's episode.
Hey fam, so as you know, today we are talking about substance use. However, it's also, I think, important for us to highlight some other observances that we are recognizing during the month of January. And so before we get into today's episode, let's talk a little bit about the fact that January is Stalking Awareness Month. T, did you know that January was Stalking Awareness Month?
I did not know until we talked about it, but I think that's a very important topic to discuss, especially in the Black community.
Yeah, I agree.
I wonder how many women have actually been stalked that talk about it. It doesn't come up randomly, right? It doesn't come up in everyday conversation, but I personally have been stalked on 2 occasions, which is crazy. I feel like I beat the odds. Thank God it didn't end up in a violent situation. But when I was living in Greece studying abroad, some unknown person became infatuated with me for walking to school and started leaving gifts and notes and all kinds of stuff. Knew what I wore each day, knew which way I walked to school. And so we had to move. Like
Oh,
me, my
wow.
roommates, everybody had to move because we had no idea. And in Greece, particularly, I think a lot of the European countries this happened, but in Greece in particular, like when you ride public transportation, like men fondle you on the bus. You're squeezing like
Really?
sardines and like men just be fondling you. And so I don't know what the statistics are for stalking in Greece and didn't ask or know them then, but I know our professor and dean was like, oh, we got to find you another place to live. And so we all had to move because we had no idea what this person was capable of. The second time I was stalked, ironically, was here in Atlanta when I lived here before. I met a guy coming out of a movie theater at Atlantic Station. We exchanged numbers. We talked a couple times. I forget what happened, but I wasn't feeling his vibe. I stopped returning his calls. This joker Googled me, like showed up at the church, was calling the
What?
church every day. They called me like, who is this person? I'm like, oh my goodness, don't give him any information about me. Again, fortunately, I just had my brother make a phone call and he stopped, but both were scary and both were
I
really
bet.
crazy. So, do you have any experience with stalking?
No, I can't say that I have. But interestingly, just recently, I did advise 2 couples to turn off their location services on their iPhones, not because I was concerned about either one of them doing anything to the other, like stalking the other. However, nothing came about it with the married couple, but with the unmarried couple, one of the individuals in the relationship, one of the partners did actually, when they couldn't get in touch with the individual on the phone, they actually pulled up their location and showed up in the parking lot
Oh,
of
wow.
the store where the person was. And for me, that location services sharing just opens the door. It just creates an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for stalking. Everything is good when everything is good when you're in a relationship, right? But as soon as things turn sour, and things were starting to sour with this couple, and
Mm.
sure enough, because the location services were on, this individual showed up in the parking lot of the grocery store.
Oh, wow.
Crazy.
And do we know that the outcome, that everything ended up peacefully? Was it out of concern or was it out of speculation?
The person said it was out of concern, but I
Mm,
think that there really was some question about where this person was.
okay.
And so when they couldn't get in touch with the person on the phone, they're like, "Oh, well, let me just ride on over and
Mhm.
see where they were." And you would think that when you see your partner's car in the
The grocery
grocery
store.
store parking lot that you would say, "Okay, like, false alarm, let me go back home. I'm not even gonna mention it to the
Right,
person," right?
right,
No, this person didn't do that.
right. Because
There
nothing
was
beats
a
a
cr
quickie and then, sperm on aisle 7. Okay,
right.
whatever.
Yes, and so it created a huge problem, for of course, for the person who was at the grocery store because it's like, "Why are you even here?"
Mhm.
A matter of fact, the person at the grocery store was there picking up dinner that they had ordered for the other person because it was their
Wow,
birthday.
wow.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, definitely egg on face on that one. But this whole sharing location thing, I think is a good topic to talk about as well. I personally, of course, this is my opinion. Some people have accused me of being a little judgy on this podcast, but it's our podcast and I'm entitled to my
right.
opinion. I don't think anyone should have your location except for your next of kin. Or, once in a while you might be somewhere and
Right.
one of your girls need to know where you are, or somebody who's not your next of kin might need to know where you are and you drop a pin or something like that. But
Mhm.
I've been in the hairdresser and heard ladies younger than myself in their 20s, even in their teens, talking about they share their location or let me see where he is right now. And I'm like, how long y'all been together? 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 days.
Mhm.
Mm-mm.
No,
Like,
we're not
I'm
doing
sorry
that.
that that has become a trend, because like you said, I think that opens up doors of control,
Mhm.
paranoia, um, could lead to domestic violence,
For
because of
sure.
arguments and so forth and so on. And so I think, especially as women, we really need to be careful, um, about giving full access
Mhm.
to people who have not earned it. So that's my opinion on that particular piece. But in terms of stalking, I just think we need to be aware when, the red flags start coming up. We have to pay
Yes.
attention to that because women were like, oh, that was cute. He showed up at the grocery store. No,
No, it wasn't.
it wasn't cute, especially younger people. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's dangerous
Mhm.
behavior.
It is very dangerous behavior. Yeah. Definitely wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that it is Stalking Awareness Month. And we highlighted one way to prevent stalking behavior. Are there any other things that come to mind for you that we might be able to do in order to prevent stalking?
Well, I was always taught don't come home the same way every day.
Mhm.
Um, what you got?
I think the recommendation that you gave in terms of not coming home the same way is a really good one. I think that sometimes we get so accustomed to, just kind of being and doing our day to day that we don't think about the fact that there might be somebody who is attempting or interested in stalking us for whatever reason, whether it's somebody we know or somebody that we don't know. So I think we have to learn to be a little bit more vigilant about paying attention to our surroundings
Mhm.
and making sure that we are not leaving ourselves vulnerable to situations. I think the other thing that you need to do, especially if there's a potential of you being stalked by somebody that you're in a relationship with, you definitely need to let somebody know
Yes.
because when people don't know that you are feeling uneasy, maybe about the person that you are dating or in a relationship with, and they start to exhibit some of those behaviors that make you uncomfortable, someone needs to know that so that, God forbid, something does happen, someone has been alerted. Someone knows that this is uncharacteristic. Someone knows to alert
Absolutely.
folks that, they need to start looking for you and who you were with and start asking questions about the last places you were. So definitely need to be more vigilant about that. And I think that we also have gotten accustomed to this being more of a women's issue because of how it's been
Mm,
portrayed in the past,
good
but
point.
men definitely could be stalked. And so I think we need to raise more awareness of stalking even among men and also give men the same recommendations that we would for
I
women.
think that's an excellent point. I was watching the Sherry Shepherd show yesterday, and she ran down a list of the things we used to do as young women or teenage women. Remember when we used to pull up when we found out they was at the party? Remember when we used to pull up at the club? Remember when we used to slash
Mhm.
their tires?
Mhm.
Remember when we used to put a bleach on their clothes? And once again, you're right. Women, we found that funny, cute, justifiable, but it's not.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think that that's an excellent point you raised, that it can definitely go both ways. Some other
Absolutely.
recommendations. Well, when you say that, let someone know what's going on. Definitely document everything. Stalking is such,
Mhm.
when you finally file a criminal complaint, stalking is such a hard case to prove that the more
Right.
documentation you have, the better. When, what, where, how, the time, the day, all of that is very important.
Mhm.
Also, we want to secure our social media accounts. We want to make them private. We live in an age where we want to be influencers, where everybody know what we're doing 3 minute of the day. But the truth of the matter is we need to make that private. Also, which I'm guilty of, need to stop allowing people who have friend requests that we really don't know.
Mhm.
Because that can open a gateway for people to know about you. Um,
Absolutely.
I got in trouble for this, about sharing our location or your routine on social media, or what you're doing, where you're at. And actually, a male friend of mine told me he don't post anything until after it happened. Like if
Right.
he went to
Same
a
here.
concert or a restaurant or something, he's already gone by the time he posted. And so I think that's a really good tip as well.
Mhm.
Um, and then sometimes you gotta change your information. I know we're all, most of us are like, "Oh, I had the same number 20 years. I had the same
That's
email
me.
address." Right? Matter of fact, I had to change my email address, and somebody said to me yesterday, "You're annoying. Sometimes you gotta switch it up. Everybody can't have the
Right.
same access to you this year that they had last year."
That's right.
Um, so definitely another thing, just in general with safety, when you get in your car, before you get in your car, look in the back seat, look under the
Mhm.
ground, make sure
Mhm.
nobody's in there, that type of stuff.
Yeah. I wanna go back to what you were speaking on as it relates to social media. I think so often we get so accustomed to people having full access to us that we don't think about social media as providing an opportunity for stalking. But I will also suggest that you have to be mindful of who your friends are on social media, right? So it's not just making sure that we don't accept friend requests from people we don't know, but also being a little bit more discriminating about the
Mm,
individuals we're connected to on our social media
absolutely.
accounts.
Yeah,
Because while, it may seem benign that someone from elementary school is now reaching out to you and, friending you, if unless you grew up with that person, you don't really know that person. You don't really know
true.
their motivations and why they want to connect with you. So it's important for us, I think all of us, to be a lot more discriminating with who we are connected with on social media.
So true, and verify, right? Because
Mhm.
even if we grew up with them, you mentioned last week about you had a text scheme or whatever, but on social
Mhm.
media, especially on Facebook, a lot of people clone these accounts,
Right.
and then they interact with you as if they know you. And then
Right.
you start interacting, and then maybe something will be off. But there are a lot of people who get tricked. I'll tell you a story, and I still don't know if it was a scam or not. I guess I need to call her, but in my mind, as my hairdresser say, I blocked her. So I
Mhm.
have a friend that I grew up with who messaged me, which I always think is weird when people send me a message on Messenger unless they're forwarding something from social media when you have my
Mhm.
phone number.
Right.
And so she sent me a message on in Messenger, and we was busting it up. Everything was fine. It seemed, we talking about our moms, our kids, all the things. And then she was like, "Oh, I'm a teacher. Can you sponsor 2 kids to go on this bus trip?" And I'm like, "Okay,
Hmm.
what's your Cash App?" What's the Cash App came up under her phone number, so I sent it. Couple days later, we busting it up. Now, mind you, I hadn't heard it from this person in a minute, like maybe
Mhm.
a year or two. We busting it up again, and she like, "Yeah, girl, blah 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 blah." So, can I borrow $60 until Friday? I was like, okay. I don't know what's happening, if she's scamming, if somebody else done cloned her account, but you got to
Right.
go.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
a $40 life
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah, that whole internet safety piece and just being more vigilant about who we're connected to and who we're sharing information with, who we are interacting with and giving money to. I mean,
Mhm,
these bots and scammers are
mm,
everywhere now. I remember a couple years ago, my ex-husband's sister-in-law had a post on her Facebook page, and she posts regularly, right? We communicate all the time through Facebook. And she happened to post that she was selling her dad's stuff because he was moving into a retirement community. And so she had a car on there
mm,
that she had listed a price for, and it basically was like first come, first
mhm,
serve. And
mhm,
then some other items like home items. On the surface, it didn't seem like it was problematic. And so I ended up calling her directly
mhm,
and during the phone call, that's when she mentioned that she had lost access to her Facebook page and that this was the third time that someone had posted something like
mm,
this
mm,
and that she had been having difficulty from Facebook in recapturing her account or shutting it
mm,
down so that this
mhm.
person would stop manipulating people. And so, you know, I think, probably should do a whole episode on internet safety because it
Right.
definitely extends beyond this whole stalking conversation. And these criminals are getting so savvy with how they use social media that I
Mhm.
do think that it's worthwhile to have more conversations about that. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I think that's a great idea. All right, what's happening now on this day?
So on this day in 1953, author Ralph Ellison won the National Book Award for his seminal novel, Invisible Man.
I like that.
On this day in 1961, soprano Leontine Price made her historic debut at the Metropolitan Opera, breaking racial barriers in opera.
Oh, very nice. It's a
Hmm.
shame that we still have to break racial barriers and the things we do,
Right.
but keep doing
Absolutely.
it so that we can keep standing on shoulders.
Seriously. And I mean, whose voice was more powerful than hers at that time? Like, the door should have flung open at the Metropolitan Opera House for Sister Leontine Price.
Absolutely, because they've always wanted our rhythm and not our blues. Hey.
Hey. All right. And then also in 1972, gospel music icon Mahalia Jackson, known as the Queen of Gospel, died in Chicago.
Mm. I hope she had a peaceful transition. We
Yeah,
definitely, even
same.
now, still listen to her music, right? You can't have
Hmm.
Black history without acknowledging Mahalia Jackson. All of them dealing with the racial injustices. I'm always fascinated. The first thing, oh, let me not lose my black card. The second thing that comes to mind is the movie of the Invisible Man, which has nothing to do with the book Invisible Man. But Invisible Man, definitely deals with the injustices in society, and it's great and sad that Ralph Ellison, that is the only book that was recognized in his lifetime. But certainly we know his work in the community and the activism that he did, along with Mahalia Jackson and Leontine Price, are definitely lifelong achievements.
You're right.
Okay. What's on our community calendar for the day?
So on the community calendar for January is Substance Use Disorder Treatment Month. And I think it's really important for us to talk about substance use disorder and its treatment, especially since we in the Black community have dealt with substance use disorder. Oftentimes, not so much because this has been something that we brought on ourselves, right? If we think about,
Mm.
how drugs came into the Black community and then the government turned around and had this war on drugs that really targeted Black communities. I think it's important for us to raise the awareness of substance use disorder treatment.
Absolutely. Like you said, especially when we had the crack epidemic, it really dropped
Mhm.
into our neighborhoods. And then people were hooked. Our own people sold it. I mean, there's a whole systemic issue around this. I can't remember I heard it, but someone said like very few people, I don't wanna say nobody, but very few people go to Colombia, Nicaragua, and China to get, drugs. You know,
Right.
they're either bought in or they have a connect. They're not actually going to these distant places. And so, I think it's very sad that, in our communities, we're prone to it because we have better access to
Mhm.
substances. And then, not only are lives destroyed and families disrupted, but then we're literally criminalized and institutionalized for something that the colonizers implemented into our community. So this is treatment month, but I don't think we can talk about treatment without talking about some of the triggers that happen. So we know we have greater
Mm.
access, right? To strong drugs, to addictive drugs. Well, what are some other triggers?
I think stress. We talked about stress the other day as being something that we need to make sure that we are addressing for ourselves and in our
Mhm.
homes and in our communities. But stress is a big one. I know individuals who have become addicted to substances, whether that's drugs or alcohol, because they lost their job. Right.
Mhm.
So that could be one of the triggers because they lost someone that they
Mhm.
loved.
Mhm.
And that and so they started spiraling and they used drugs and alcohol and other substances to cope, to medicate, to try to,
Mhm. Self-medicate, yeah.
yeah, work through the trauma and the hurt that they were dealing with. So that's definitely another trigger. In my own research, I focus on adverse childhood experiences. And
Mm.
so when we think about adversities that happen with young people before the age of 18,
Mhm.
there are several things that when you compound them, when children experience multiple adversities,
Mm.
they have a greater likelihood of experiencing substance use disorder. And so making sure that we are nurturing our young people, making sure that there is a village around young people so that when they do experience adversities, because all kids, all of us experience adversities,
Sure.
but when they experience adversities that they have a loving adult around them who can nurture them, who can talk with them, who can help them process through whatever it is that they're dealing with. So definitely addressing those ACEs early in life.
Absolutely. And when you talk about family, it reminded me that a friend of mine mentioned from our stress, episode that, family dynamics are a
Mhm.
huge stressor, as well as I think could be a potential gateway to self medicate, as we talked about, especially when
Mhm.
we have access to it. And so we have to keep that in mind as well. And when you talk about having an actual community around young people or people in general, we have to talk honestly and listen openly.
Right.
I think that's really important as well. When I was growing up, Nancy Reagan had those commercials on
Ooh, I
ABC where
remember
she cracked the egg and was like, "This is your brain. This is your brain. Don't try."
I
And between
remember those
that and my
commercials.
mom, it was just, "Don't do it."
Right.
No explanation, no ability to talk about the why or talk about, "Well, what about this?"
Mhm.
"What about alcohol? What about weed?" Or marijuana, as they call it. Back then, they called it reefer.
Right.
We didn't have any conversations about it, so I think that's important too.
Mhm. And we used to have the DARE program. Do you remember
Mm,
DARE when you were
yep,
in
yeah, they would come
school?
to the school.
That's right, drug abuse resistance education. So, yeah, I remember taking DARE classes when I was in school. And I think that those things are good. I'm a big proponent of prevention education. However, I do think that we have to layer
Mhm,
education, prevention
mhm,
education. So it can't just be education that happens at school. It has to also be education that happens at home, education that happens
absolutely.
in the community, education that happens at church.
Mhm,
We have to make sure that all of those entities are open to those conversations, because we also know that it's the repetition in the
Mhm.
messaging that really helps to solidify it in people's brains. So we definitely want to make sure that we are encouraging all organizations to increase awareness about substance use disorder and the treatment options that exist for individuals. And that really is a sore spot for me. And I'll tell you why. A few years ago, most of the people who know me know that, in our family, we struggled with a situation with substance use disorder
Mhm.
by one of our loved ones. And one of the frustrations that I had was that when someone said, you really should check out an Al Anon program,
Mm.
when I looked for Al-Anon programs, which are programs to support families as they
Right.
are trying to love and nurture someone who's dealing with substance use disorder, I could not find not one program near my house that
Wow.
was at a Black church. All of the programs were at white churches. And that's
Mm.
not to say that a white church cannot provide support and
Right.
cannot, provide information that you would need as a Black family
But it
in
was
order
awareness.
to
Mhm.
support your loved one, and show you how to do the things that you need to do to make sure that you're okay while you're
Right.
going through that. But because I was familiar with all of these churches and I had been,
Mm.
to these churches before, I didn't feel as comfortable going to those churches, knowing that I wasn't going to see many people who look like me
Yeah.
there. And so it caused me to raise the question with our pastor about, why we didn't have an Al Anon program at our own church,
Mm.
and why it was that I saw very few Black churches in the metro area that had these Al Anon programs. And come to find out, like, our family wasn't the only one who was struggling with it. Lots of
Wow.
families were
Absolutely.
struggling with it.
Absolutely.
And I think that we lose sight of the fact that these programs are hugely beneficial, but we have to make sure that in our communities, we're making those programs available. So whether it's at a
Mhm.
church or a
Mhm.
community center or some other place that's frequented by our folks, we need to start having the conversations to make sure that those programs get placed in those communities.
I think that's an excellent point because even when you were speaking about Al-Anon, I was thinking about I do know churches that have AA or NA meetings like in their church during the weekday, but the church is not necessarily a part. They're
Mhm.
allowing the
Right.
space, but they're not a
Correct.
part of the conversation.
Mhm.
And so I think in our communities, we need to be a part of the conversation, not just when someone is in recovery, but in terms of prevention. So
Mhm.
I don't exactly know what that looks like, but I do know in, youth church and Sunday school, in some other capacity, maybe a Saturday workshop quarterly or something like that, that we do need to be talking about substance abuse, substance prevention, and substance treatment. Because the reality of it is, all of us have at least one person, if not more, in our family who has struggled.
Absolutely.
And some of that is hereditary, right? when uh when colonizers started needing treatment, we found out that it was a genetic predisposition. Abuse could be hereditary. Alcoholism is hereditary. It's a syndrome. Drug addiction is a health crisis. But we
Right.
also don't, we don't use that type of phraseology in our communities either, and we're not
Mhm.
aware. We just like, oh, Larry stole my toaster. He a crackhead. But was Larry mama or daddy a crackhead?
Mhm.
Um, one thing that I did hear growing up that marijuana was a gateway drug, and I don't know if I agree with that, especially now that we have medicinal marijuana and
Correct.
CBD and all these things.
Mhm.
But I do know people who have had other things laced in a joint or a blunt. And
Right.
so then that leads to unintended addiction as well.
Mhm. For sure. Yeah. I think we tend to downplay that there, in some communities, in some families, there is that genetic predisposition to
Mhm,
substance use
mhm,
disorder. And so we just kind of dismiss it as, oh, so and so has a drinking problem.
mhm,
But if we look at their family, one of their parents probably had a drinking problem.
mhm,
Someone else in the family has a drinking problem. So it's
mhm.
not just, that person's problem.
Right.
There is a need for the family to rally together to try to determine how best to seek out treatment and support.
So when you talk about support, I think it's important for us to lift up that support is not just sending your loved one to a treatment facility, right?
Mhm.
It's also showing up when they allow you, when the facility allows you to show up. It's also, reiterating your love, your family values, and that type of thing. Because I think sometimes support is here, I'll just pay for you to go somewhere, or here, I dropped you off. Um,
Right.
but then even when that's over, how do we undergird the support to make sure that people don't relapse?
Mhm.
And a lot of it is out of our control, but there are things that we can do.
Oh, yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that because I was just getting ready to say that relapse is likely. For me, my thought was, okay, let me just get them into a program and
Mm,
they'll be good. But 2 programs later, after
mhm,
being kicked out twice, obviously, families need to be prepared for that possibility because there is a high likelihood that a person will relapse, a person will not complete treatment, even if they're at a facility, even if they're in a program.
mm,
And so even when we're increasing awareness, we have to, for families, increase awareness of all of the potential outcomes that a family might experience so that it doesn't come as a shock to them. And I think it's especially hard when families are paying out of pocket
mm,
money to put their loved ones into these facilities and then
right,
to feel like because their loved one gets kicked out, their loved one doesn't follow the rules or relapses, it's easy to feel like, oh, this was a waste of my money,
right, and wash
was a
your
waste of
hands.
my time and I'm going to wash
Mhm,
my hands of this loved one. But knowing how substance use manifests in communities, then families and loved ones can be more prepared for all of the potential outcomes.
absolutely. And then when you are in rehab, they stress surrounding yourself with positive people and
Hmm.
circumstances and not going back to the surroundings where it's easy for you to relapse. And I would say that is the same for prevention as well. We've all heard the expression in our communities, birds of a feather flock together, right?
Right.
And peer pressure is real, whether it's young adults or whether it's full grown adults, unfortunately. Full grown adults have a tendency more to say, no, that's not for me. I'm not into that. But as young adults, here, just try it or you'll be okay. Or, oh, you're lame or you're not fun, that kind of thing. We have to learn to walk away for relationships that are not only beneficial for us in the present, but that are not helping us get to where we want to be in life.
That's for sure. And then I think the other thing to keep in mind is that treatment looks different for everyone.
Mhm.
So some people may need to go the inpatient route. We, in our family, we tried inpatient at one point. We also tried outpatient at one point. And
Right.
so you have to just recognize that there are different treatment options. And interestingly, what ended up working was neither program. It wasn't an
Mm.
inpatient program. It wasn't an outpatient program. It was a family member stepping up and saying, I am going to take this on as my ministry, basically.
Wow.
And so that's what they did. And not all families have that, unfortunately, but it would be amazing if they did. And so that's what ended up working. Just
Wow.
a lot of family members rallying together, but one in particular saying, no, they're coming to live with me and I am
Mhm.
going to love them through this. And so depending on, the individual who's dealing with the disorder, right, that may or may not work for them. And so you have to figure out what works best for you and your loved one. But at the end of the day, I think it's important for us to not stigmatize people, not to push them to the side, not to say, oh, that's that person's problem because it's all of our problems. Yeah, felt like to us that at first that it was just my household's problem, but
Mhm.
it really was more than that, right? It was our full community's issue.
Absolutely.
And so the more we can remind people that this impacts more than just the individual dealing with the disorder and their immediate family, the more I think we'll see people successfully completing treatment. And so just thinking about treatment options, I know sometimes it's difficult to find where you can go and get treatment, but actually on the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration's website, otherwise known as SAMHSA, SAMHSA, you can access treatment centers all across the US. And you can also find toolkits and information that might be helpful to individuals and families as they are navigating substance use disorder.
Absolutely. And then also, if you dial 988, people think that that's just a suicide prevention hotline,
Mhm.
but they also will do referrals and resources for substance abuse treatment. I'm big on therapy and
Yes.
mental health, which this is a mental health disorder as well, I believe, as well as hereditary. But there are specific therapies that are used in substance abuse. Like you said, one thing doesn't work for everybody. So we're most familiar with the 12-step program.
Mhm.
Like you said, in that program, a lot of times can be residential, inpatient, outpatient. But some of the mechanisms, even for one-on-one therapy, is something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which
Mhm.
focus on identifying problematic thoughts and behaviors that led to that addiction. So remember, you have to deal with the underlying issue. We can't just say,
Right.
well, my mama was an alcoholic. We gotta talk about, well, what made you decide to have a drink
Mhm.
knowing that? I know people who go either way. My mama was an alcoholic. I don't drink at all. I've never touched it.
Mhm.
My mom was alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic too. So we have choices, but whatever the choice we make, I think it's really good to engage in therapy. We also have something called motivational interviewing, which helps individuals build motivation to change, especially when they're saying they don't want to. I mean, the
Mhm.
reality of it is some people are like, nah, I'm good. We have a lot of functioning persons who have addictions who
Mhm.
get up and work, not just 9 to 5, but run Fortune 500 companies.
Right.
A lot of time when we think about addiction, we just think about the homeless or people stealing or living in the gutter. But the reality of it is, there's a lot of people doing major things who have a
Mhm.
substance abuse. There's another methodology called contingency management, which uses incentives. Um, to remain drug free, like vouchers or prizes to reward positive behaviors. Now, I don't know how great that is because what happens when you take away the reward,
Right.
when you take away the system, but that is one of the treatments that are used. And then another one is dialectical behavior therapy, which is a variation of CBT, and it helps them manage intense emotions and improve interpersonal skills. And so I think that's important because sometimes you can have co-occurring issues. So you can
Right.
have a substance abuse issue, but you can be bipolar. And because your
Mhm.
bipolarism isn't treated and you're self-medicating, then now you have an addiction problem. So taking those kinds of things in mind as well. I always say it's important to talk to somebody, not just your friends, but somebody who's impartial, but also can point out problematic behavior and thought process and help
Mhm.
you redirect those thoughts and tendencies, and sometimes use medication and
Right.
Jesus to help you get
Right.
back on track.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, they're a professional, right? They've been trained.
Mhm.
And so talking to your friends and your loved ones, they may not have the right type of training to support you in the way that you need to be supported.
Right.
So seeking out treatment by a professional is always important.
Right, because there's a difference between venting and problem solving, or
Mhm.
venting and having tools to deal with whatever you're venting about, right? Most of our friends just allow us to vent. And they might have some sage advice, but clinically, what's happening? And so that's important.
Excellent advice. So next up is the herbal tea. So, as a reminder, the herbal tea segment is an opportunity for us to talk about what you all are gossiping about, but offer something beneficial to our community's collective well being. So, T, what you got?
Oh my goodness, girl. And it's so funny. Some people are like, this is my favorite section. Like we Wendy Williams or something. But the herbal tea, food for thought, all of that good stuff. I think first and foremost in the Black community, for many of us, we cannot stop talking about Kevin James, who, if you don't know who that is the current president of Morris Brown College.
Today, anyway.
Today anyway, right? So he has been the president for a couple years, and I want to say he's been great for the college. They've been reaccredited. They have raised money. They have increased student enrollment. They've gotten financial aid back. All of those things. Howsoever, as our parents would say, he also has been accused of misappropriation of funds and sexual misconduct. And I want to be clear, sexual misconduct is not the same thing as assault. It could be, but sexual misconduct is being involved in a relationship where there's a power imbalance. Sexual misconduct is unwanted pictures, conversations, so forth and so on. Sexual assault is actually being touched, inclusive of rape, but being touched in a way that is inappropriate. And so I think that we need to make that distinction, because some people are like, well, did he rape them? Well, no, that's not what's being alleged, but it's still inappropriate conduct. And so that being said, Kevin James did those good works, but he's also being accused of these misdeeds. An investigation supposedly was conducted while he was suspended. He was then terminated. He then went on a crusade to get his job back, saying his termination was not right, so forth and so on. Less than a week later, he was reinstated as president. And then the same day that he was instated as president, more allegations came with alleged receipts. And so, I have a lot of thoughts about this. This in conjunction with all the drama that's going on in the Black church, and this is occurring at a HBCU. As we talked about, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, when do we decide that the accusers are validated even during the investigation? And when do we say, okay, you have a right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty? And then my third thought is why, especially to you as someone who's worked in HBCU academia, why would they terminate someone after an investigation and then turn around and hire them? And how does that impact the student body? I know that was a lot. You go, girl.
There was a lot, but that's okay. Let's see if I can unpack this. So, the trustee board did put forth a statement indicating that Dr. Kevin James was being reinstated because the board did not fulfill its governance responsibility by ensuring that they investigated the claim thoroughly and appropriately before terminating him.
Mm,
So he really did have a leg to stand on. I remember seeing posts that he made indicating that Morris Brown had terminated him without cause. And
mm,
so that raised a lot of red flags. I think that he was right in terms of advocating for his job back,
oh,
because if they had read his contract, they would have known what terminating him with cause and without cause, would have been.
I see.
And they would have been able to move forward in the appropriate way. For me, I have a lot that I could talk about in terms of HBCU spaces because, I'm an HBCU alum. I've worked at HBCUs. And I do have a deep love for HBCUs. Sometimes our organizations don't always do it the right way.
Mm,
This was an example of an HBCU trustee board not handling their business in the most appropriate way. And
Okay.
so not only has this brought a level of unnecessary attention to Morris Brown College, but also it has left a sour taste in people's mouths. I
Mhm.
think that there are lots of alums and people who are on the periphery of Morris Brown who have a lot of love for the school, but also are side eyeing the school right now because it's like, well, how could you fumble this? Right. Of all things, that the trustee board does, this is one of the most important things that they do: hire,
Mm,
terminate, and
mm.
monitor the work of the president of the institution. And so, how do you
Gotcha.
get this so wrong? So I do think that Morris Brown College does have a lot of work to do in terms of rebuilding its reputation
Mhm.
because it has one of the most amazing comeback stories. My mom went to an HBCU that closed
Mm.
and is working to reopen, but it seems like that is so far away. And so for
Mm.
Morris Brown to have had this resurgence and it be so public and so powerful. And Dr. Kevin James has done an amazing job, I think, of bringing the school
For
back.
sure.
This is a very unfortunate and I think it was a preventable situation. And then to answer your question about how it impacts the students, I think HBCUs tend to have drama anyway, right?
Okay.
We have our own drama and some of it's warranted, some of it is just, I don't know, unnecessary, but it's not new. And so, today I've been seeing a lot of posts about the alumni wanting him to be terminated again, right?
Mm.
They are not happy with the things that have come out. And so for most students, they don't understand governance of an
Yeah.
institution. They just know that they're there for an education. And so they're really just trying to navigate this current environment and stay focused on their studies. But this is the constant conversation that's happening. And so I would just say if you're a student at Morris Brown, just stay the course, go to class, stay focused on your academics, let the administrators and the board work through these issues, try to tune out what's happening in the news, what's happening on social media, and really just stay focused on your studies because this is not the first institution this has happened at. And, probably, very publicly, um, probably more publicly than some others. I know there was an issue with another HBCU just last year, the year before last, where the trustee board fumbled a transition in the presidency. But at the end of the day, just keep it moving and it'll all work itself out in the end.
So, thank you for breaking down the governance of the scenario and encouraging those students who are affected but are not directly part of the allegations, right? What do we do with the students and faculty who have brought forth their allegations?
They just need to trust the process, right? I'm certain that if there were allegations that were made on campus by students or faculty or staff, the campus has a process by
Mm-hmm.
which those allegations will be investigated that don't involve the board, right?
Gotcha.
These are things that would happen with the administrators at the institution. What we see so publicly in the news is really dealing with the board and how they deal with the president. Now,
Okay.
if anything has happened in terms of the president himself, that information will go to the board. The board will have assigned someone, preferably an attorney, an employment attorney, who will be responsible for moving that through. But again, the board has a major job right now
Mm.
in regaining the trust of the people, the students, the faculty, the staff, and then the greater campus community. So I do anticipate that there'll probably be some resignations from the board
Okay.
at some point, and then seating of individuals who can help move the institution forward even after this debacle.
Well, that's good to know. I think I just want to highlight if something happens to you that you're not comfortable with, it doesn't matter what the precedence has been on how it has been handled. I think if you truly, something has happened to you, that it's still worthwhile to report, as well as
Absolutely.
document every single thing that happened, as well as document who you reported to and how it was responded to and all of the things to make sure that you cover yourself. Because unfortunately, it feels like the people who are making the accusations are being attacked, whether it's
Mhm.
staff for saying that there's financial misappropriation or whether it's the sexual allegations, those people are being attacked. And as you're saying, like there's a process to prove in quotation guilt or in quotation innocence, right? There's a process for those people who made those accusations as well. And so, as we talked about in the church conflict, we need to stop name calling and bashing people when we
Mm.
don't know all the facts, whether it be on social media, which is the worst because you're hiding behind these characters, or whether it's in person. Let the process work itself out before you come to a conclusion.
Mhm. Agreed. All right. So we've talked about Morris Brown and the drama surrounding its firing and rehiring of its president. So what's the next topic?
So the Oscar nominations came out today, and it looks
Mm.
like the Academy actually got it right. Well, so far in terms of the nominations, Sinners has a record-breaking 16 nominations.
Oh,
Girl,
wow.
girl, they ain't got nominated for everything: best actor, best actress, best supporting actor, best supporting actress, best film, best cinematography, best music, girl, best costume. You name
Okay.
it.
That's wonderful news, especially given that we just talked last week about how Sinners was snubbed at the Golden Globes. So
Absolutely.
yeah, there is the potential here for Sinners to take home a lot of awards. So that excites me a lot.
It excites me too. And, the Golden Globes usually sets the pace for award season. So they
Mhm.
got nominated for a couple things, and as we feel, they got snubbed. But for the Academy Awards to nominate them on these record-breaking things is just phenomenal to me. I don't know who
Mhm.
Ryan I guess I could Google it. I don't know who Ryan Coogler's costume designer is, but that person, they deserve awards for
Mhm.
what they doing. Still from Wakanda Forever,
For
Wakanda,
sure.
Black Panther, all the things.
Right.
They definitely deserve, of course, in my humble opinion, costume award, best original picture, um, Michael B. Jordan,
Mhm.
best director, you know. And that's coming from a person who don't take my black card away. I really wasn't feeling the movie much. I was
Mhm.
feeling the movement. I definitely enjoyed the musical portion of ancestral history and how music transcends time. Um, some of the other things I wasn't feeling, but cinematography wise,
Mhm.
I mean, you can't take that away. How the
No, you
film was
can't.
shot, how
Right.
he incorporated the music, the blend of time and cultures.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you got to give it to him on genius for how that film was put together.
And the cast was phenomenal.
Yes,
Mhm. So, yeah, all the way around, I think, Sinners is gonna take home a lot of awards, so
I
I'm looking
think
forward to
so.
watching.
And I will also say, I believe I read that this was the first time that we like brights, but dark skinned women were portrayed
Mhm.
positively in terms of love interest. And then there was
Mhm.
a thick girl who was,
Right.
dark skinned as a love interest. And so I think even though we'll leave that for another conversation, but I definitely think that that's important to acknowledge as well. It's needed.
Mhm.
Um,
For sure.
we said we wasn't going to talk about Lunel and I'll be sure, but love is love. And
Love
so we do need to highlight, just in cinema, that beauty comes in different shapes, sizes, colors, all the things. And
shades,
we should
yeah, all that.
shades. We should stop
Mhm.
saying beauty is only this, because
Mhm.
definitely both of those women were beautiful.
Mhm.
Full stop. Yep.
In addition to being phenomenal actresses, so,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. All right. Well, looking forward to watching the Oscars and seeing how well Sinners does.
Absolutely. All right. What's up next week?
Next week, y'all, we are going to be entering February. Can you believe it's February already?
Oh my
I
goodness.
can't.
We should call it extra blackety black 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 month.
Extra blackity black month. I love it. Let's do it. We can do whatever we want. It's our show, right?
Right. And Black 365. Come on.
Black 365 and 366 on a leap year.
That part.
Excellent. So next month, February, in addition to Black History, which we talk about every show, we are
Mhm.
going to be discussing heart health. And so we will have a guest with us next week. I won't tell you who it is. You'll have to tune in to hear who is joining us on the show, but we will definitely talk about heart health, especially since it's American Heart Month. We'll highlight a lot that the American Heart Association is doing
Mhm.
and just give you some tips on how you can make sure that you are protecting your heart. It's the only one you've got. And we'll be graced with our special guest next month. So
Awesome. I'm definitely excited for us to talk about it and bring that awareness to our community.
excellent. All right. Well, we know that you all are going to have comments and questions. So make sure that you email or voice note us at podcast@enjoylifemoreabundantly.com or visit enjoylifemoreabundantly.com/podcast to text us your question or comment related to Heart Month.
Please give us your official feedback. We love getting our individual texts and emails and phone calls, but if you could send them to our official modes of communication so that we can document them appropriately, we'd be so appreciative. Thank you so
So
much for
appreciate.
listening.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you.
All right, fam, that's it for today's episode. If this conversation helped you, please share it with someone you love and make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss next week's episode. Until then, enjoy life.
And live it more abundantly.
Cheers.
Cheers. Can I go back?